Okay, it has been a hot minute since I last recorded a video, so let's just go. Nervous energy, just getting out there. So if you're new here, hello, welcome. That wasn't my best introduction. My name is Ms. Paris. I'm a teacher, but I'm also a teaching career success mentor, which means I help teachers secure teaching jobs. I do this through personal statements, through interview support, and I also have resources if you fancy getting that support but going at your own pace, doing it more independently. I will leave all my socials below as well as my website so you can find out a little bit more about what I do. And without further ado, let me go into a video that I've been meaning to document for myself, really. So this YouTube channel started in 2019, I think, and it was all about documenting my own journey, and it kind of became kind of PGC videos, then more tips videos with the, you know, odd personal video here and there, and then it became more related to jobs. However, I kind of had a really interesting experience that I wanted to share with you, and after my surgery, which if you didn't know about, I will leave a link in the description to that video. After my surgery, I went into year 6, and year 6, I've kind of taught before on a kind of PPA front, cover teacher kind of front, but never had my own year 6 class. And it was very different to what I remember year 6 being like as a pupil myself. And I wanted to kind of talk about it because I think year 6 has this taboo. It has this, oh my goodness, year 6, like responsible for SATS, all of this kind of thing, scary stuff. But I kind of wanted to reassure you a little bit because I've done 2 years of, like, since being qualified, 2 years of year 1, 1 year of year 3, and then I went to year 6. So it really is possible to go from, you know, the younger stages of the school all the way to the upper and still survive. So especially if you're like a trainee teacher or maybe an ECT applying for jobs and you see upper key stage 2 vacancy and you freak out a little bit, this is for you. This is for your curiosity. Quick disclaimer actually, the reason I stopped uploading videos for a while is because some of my lovely year 6s found my YouTube channel and I guess I just got a bit of stage fright. I just didn't want them to keep checking up on my channel, seeing new videos, watching them, and then coming into school and seeing me or talking about it, and I just got embarrassed. So I kind of just left that for a while, and that's kind of why I've been a bit radio silent, I suppose. But yes, let's dive in. I'm going to probably separate this, not that I have a structure in mind, but I'm going to separate it into maybe academic stuff, professional development things / learning curves. I think that's the best way to go about it, because I think one of the things that people worry about the most is the academic side. You know, if you're kind of used to, let's say, year 1 content, you know, the maths is very easy. It's a whole different skill to be able to teach that maths. But I was one of those people, I kind of thought, oh my gosh, you know, year 6 English, fantastic, reading skills, love it, all that jazz. The like foundation subjects also are so interesting. Like you get really into the nitty-gritty in history, geography, I was learning new things, and freaking out before the lesson thinking I actually don't know this myself, but you kind of learn on the go. And I always say this to people, you know, make sure you're 1 step ahead and that's enough. But the thing that I was worried about the most is the maths side. Especially just having come from year 3, it's definitely harder than I remember in year 6. I was like, oh wow, algebra and all that jazz, especially when it was approaching SATS, it did feel a bit daunting, as in like we have X limited, you know, maths lessons left. We were adding some extra ones in there as well. We did a maths lesson and then we did like a maths skill lesson. So it was a lot of pressure on the maths naturally. And I think that did feel a little bit daunting, but practicing before the lesson to like make sure I could live model myself and get the right answer, making sure that I was aware of any methods that they had been previously taught, because we sat in our school, but then actually halfway through we changed set and they were like, oh, but the other teacher does it like this, and they have this little rhyme for it, which obviously I didn't know because the teacher had just made it up to help them to be more engaging. So I had to try and learn those little things on the go, which I think is helpful as well for my own professional development. Now I know those kind of rhymes, those abbreviations that he made, so that was really useful. But yeah, that got a little bit of getting used to, and I think that was probably my biggest obstacle in terms of like teaching wise. But like I said, if you just make sure you practice beforehand, you check PowerPoints and resources beforehand, make sure everything works, make sure you know the correct answer, because there's not always mark schemes, etc. Although if you are making your own resources, make sure you have a mark sheet that you can either hand out, you can maybe have a marking station, or it just speeds up the process if you're live marking. So that is definitely a tip that I would recommend. The other thing that I really wanted to reflect on is relationships. So obviously we know, even from year 3 onwards really, especially from year 3 onwards really, you can always have these kind of friendship issues. And friendship issues can be the make or break of pupil behavior at times. I mean, we had kind of like a friendship group, a group of 3 girls, and if you know, they were friends, oh my gosh, they were like inseparable, everything together, wanted to do everything together. And if they got into an argument or something happened, it was genuinely, I was impressed by how like stubborn they were. I'm saying that in the nicest way possible, but they really, like, it hit them very, very deeply. And it was really hard to actually combat that, especially in the beginning when I didn't necessarily have that relationship with them myself. You know, I was not new to the school, but new to teaching them. They'd had a different teacher for the rest of the year. I came, like I said, after my surgeries, that was around March, and it was really, really difficult. You know, it was kind of the like ignoring you, walking away from you, maybe running away from you, all those behaviors I experienced. And I think building a relationship, not just to help them in a friendship sense, but in every sense, really, really helps. And what I noticed is that further into the year, the more of a relationship you built with certain key characters, actually the more of the safety adult you became. And that did often mean that you were the one maybe getting shouted at when they were frustrated, or maybe you were the one getting all of their venting and their ranting, or even bad-mouthing other members of staff. If they were really annoyed at, you know, particular people, they would come to you to kind of talk about it, almost like a bit of a therapist situation. And it's really up to you to maintain that professional boundary and just be like, I'm not going to be talking about a member of staff in that way with you. However, I can see that you're frustrated, and what I'd like to do is sit down with you, and if you can kind of lower your volume because I'm speaking to you in a really nice, calm voice, I'd like you to match that. Let's have a discussion about it. And when that relationship is built, you have them. Like, you have them in a way that you can help calm them down. You can help talk about those emotions. Otherwise, in the beginning of the year, I had children strop for the whole day. Like, not talking, non-verbal, head down, stropping, like 6.5 hours. And that is definitely something different to the rest of the school. But one thing that, you know, once you've built that relationship, it's very different to the young years. In the young years, they will tell everyone that you are, you know, their favorite teacher. You feel really impacted and you're like, oh, that's so sweet. And then they'll walk down the corridor and say it to the next person they see. Or, you know, they'll do your colorings all the time, da 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 da. But in year 6, you really feel that it's real. You know, they're starting to get hormonal, and it's very hard for them to fake it, I think. You know, they're good at manipulating maybe and trying to get their way, or push your buttons, or test your boundaries. But actually, when that relationship is there, it is solid, and they really would try and do anything to please you in a way. Whereas like in the younger years, they're very people pleasy, most of them at least. And I think that's one thing that I definitely wasn't prepared for. You know, these hormones, I remember year 6s being like still really, really cute, really innocent, especially when they go to year 7 in secondary school. Suddenly they're the small fish in the big pond, and you see them as really cute. Oh, look at the year 7s. But when they're in year 6, I mean, I don't know now if the year 7 thing has changed, but now in year 6, it's just like, whoa, you know what I mean? And also the tone in which I spoke, I think kind of changed because of how I talk naturally. You know, I pronounce my T's, etc. I feel like sometimes they kind of saw me as a bit snooty, a bit snobby, a bit posh maybe. And so I started kind of matching how they spoke to try and be more relatable. And I am so ashamed to think about how many times I said the word slay. I'm not proud of it, but it happened. You need to build that relationship. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I made a reel of some of the things that I made as like end of year souvenir memo kind of things. And one of them had a picture of me on as well as a picture of them on. And the picture of me, they were like, slay, Miss Paris, slay. I'm so embarrassed I'm putting this on the internet. But you know, that was their way of just sharing that they liked something, or that they approved of it, or they thought it was pretty, or they thought it was cool. It was just the adjective, you know, or they're coming up to me and they're doing like, oh miss, can you do this trend? And I don't know the trend because suddenly I'm ancient in their eyes. And you know, it was just really humbling, because it's like they have this really hard exterior, and then when you actually build that relationship and you become a safe adult for them, or they realize that, you know, actually you're kind and you're a nice person, they suddenly have this really mushy interior. And it was those children that gave me the hardest time during the year, or that were the most sassy, or the most rude, or, you know, all that kind of jazz, that actually were the most emotional at the end of the year. And I think that was really telling, because the amount of times they swore at me or about the school, and they were like, oh, I'm never coming back, I hate this, can't wait to leave, and suddenly on the last day they are in tears. Whereas those children, you know, that are kind of maybe have like an extra classroom job, or like head girl, head boy, all those kind of roles, or maybe that were never really told off, never had an internal exclusion, you know, always did the homework, this and that, always praised, there were like no tears. And it just really like showed me how much those children actually need me, or need, you know, safe adults basically. So that was really, really humbling. I think the other thing to note in terms of relationships, especially before those are established, you know, at the beginning when they're kind of like really tough on you, pushing boundaries, is not to take things personally. So I was really surprised. I'm only 5 foot and most of my class were taller than me, I'll be real. And none of them made short jokes. I think I had 2 short jokes in the whole year. And when you don't let it phase you and you purposefully show there is no reaction, they no longer find it cool. And suddenly they're the ones being embarrassed, because what was meant to make a reaction, or what was meant to make all of their, you know, peers laugh, it didn't. And I think that's one really great way to show that actually you are in control. If they made a short joke and then I responded by shouting and saying, who do you think you are? That's really disrespectful. You know, straight away everyone's like, ooh, kind of vibe. But actually, if you just go, oh, nice, hadn't heard that one before, suddenly the pupil's kind of a bit sheepish and they don't want to repeat that. And I think there's a certain level of maturity that is required from you as well. It's very easy to straight away get defensive, but actually if you think about why they're doing it, you know, it's a big learning curve. Or, you know, when they keep asking your age, etc, etc, like it became this big hype, and suddenly I told them my age at the end and they were like, oh, okay, fair. Like that was their reaction. And this was months of me stalling, delaying, saying like, no, I'm not telling you, and then, you know, when they finally found out, it was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, and that was it, you know. So if they hype anything, if they start being rude, if they start making comments, don't take it personally, and really just kind of strive with the flow. I think that's tricky when you first start out, because you kind of maybe feel like it's showing you in a weak sense, but that's not the case at all. I think in my first week or second week, this boy kind of started swearing at me, called me a B word, stormed out the room, and my lack of reaction, the children that were still sat down literally responded and went, wow, miss, you're really chill, like wow. And do you know what, that to me was such a good sign, because I did not let it phase me. I did not let them see that that was a weakness. I let them see that actually I was in control and I wasn't scared of the pupil, or they didn't have the control of the situation, they didn't have the power, it was still in my hands. And that also helped them to feel safe, because they knew that, you know, if anything happened, I had their back. So that was a big thing as well. And the last reflection I have, sorry, this isn't a fancy schmancy video where I've changed angles and I've done this and that. This is just me raw speaking. If nobody watches this, at least I've got it for my memory. The last thing is, after SATS, year 6 is so enjoyable. There's so much pressure on the lead up to it, and my heart was really breaking because the children were stressing. I had parents communicating with me saying how like worried that their children were. So I tried to do my bit. You know, I kind of printed off some well-being SATS kind of journals where there's mindful colouring, things like that, a place for them to write their emotions, etc. I kind of reassured them that actually, even if they didn't do as well as they hoped, it's not the end of the world. It's just to help them, like, it's just to help their secondary school set them, etc. But afterwards it was so enjoyable. We did we set up a musical, which just made me kind of so emotional. They performed so well, they tried their hardest. God knows we had so many fights among pupils, not literally, but like fights of kind of like, oh, I don't want to, do we have to practice that dance again? But actually at the end they pulled it off. I have such fond memories. I hope they do too. We had more flexibility to do some trips. We had just a lot more relaxed tone, and I actually think that that whole lead up to SATS, in order to have kind of more fun afterwards, is worth it. I think, you know, when you're in the middle of it, SATS in May, you just think, oh, why, we could do with more time. But if you had to keep pushing those children who are already really tired to July, and then let's say they have a week of more like flexible learning before leaving, they would leave with so many painful memories, I think. Whereas, you know, June, July, we were obviously covering the national curriculum, we were doing what was in our long-term plan, we caught up on a lot more foundation subjects that we might have got a little bit behind on, but it was enjoyable. You know, you could see the love of learning returning. And one thing that was really significant is that with reading skills, you know, it's very strict, like this is how you answer a SATS question, these are the things they're looking for, and we really kind of draw that in on the lead up to make sure they get as many marks as possible that represents their ability and what we know they're capable of. But then afterwards, it's like their imagination just hit an all-time low. We suddenly, you know, in writing, we started writing stories again, and they were almost like, what would you like me to write? And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, what? You know, they were looking for a correct answer, and we really took a long time in getting their imagination back, getting their love for learning back, and that whole process was really enjoyable. You know, I was building those relationships, we were having fun, we were doing subjects without so much pressure on, you know, XYZ, doing things a certain way, mark schemes, etc. Whereas other year groups, obviously, we're still doing everything by the book, routine, until the very last lesson. And, you know, knowing they had Ofsted in the middle of their SATS week as well, I'm really proud of them. And I think year 6 journey, I'm trying not to get emotional because I've already cried numerous times, and I was in floods of tears at the end. I wasn't even ashamed of it, I was just crying in front of them because I was like, I'm gonna miss you all. But it was really such an interesting journey, and you know, some of the children, I really do feel like I made an impact. You know, you can say that with every single year. If you're helping them with phonics and reading, or in year 3, let's say they might still be on phonics and you're helping them jump up levels, etc. You can make impact in every year. But I think for some of those children who were ready to fight every single battle, just mellowing them a little bit, saying that actually, you know, I am here for you if you need to talk. Safeguarding issues came up so much more when they felt that they could talk to you versus, you know, this stroppy, hard demeanour of walking away, like not speaking for hours. You didn't get anywhere. And actually by the end, even some of the hardest, I mean that not behaviour, but like in the exterior sense, they even started to kind of be like, oh, Miss Paris, like I did this on the weekend, can I show you this thing? And I was like, these are the wholesome children that you want to think of when you start teaching. And they were there the whole time, despite WhatsApp and things that they shouldn't be on. And, you know, disagreements online, disagreements in person, bad-mouthing other teachers, hating the school, they are all still childlike. And I think if you are going into year 6, remember that no matter what they say and do, there is still this really wholesome child underneath, not impacted by social media. Even those that were doing makeup, and I said, look, I don't have makeup, I have spots, it's fine if you have spots, it's okay. And you saw them start to wear less and less makeup, not because I shouted at them and said you're not allowed to wear mascara, but because I made them feel more confident. Remember that when you go into year 6, because those children are still there, and although you might not see them straight away, build those relationships and you will find them. And in terms of academics or anything you're worried about, research, ask for help, ask questions, practice in advance, because you are more than capable. And I think they don't teach you these things, these messages in teacher training, because every experience is different. But I really enjoyed year 6, and although I'll be going into year 4 in September, I will definitely miss them. And if they are being nosy and watching this very long video, then I wish you the best of luck in year 7, guys, and know that you had an impact on me as well as the rest of the school. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave me a comment. Have you ever taught year 6? What was your experience like? Would you ever consider teaching year 6? How do you feel about the possibility of teaching year 6? And subscribe for more teaching related content in future. Bye.